I used to think the loneliest sound in Yellowstone was the wind scraping across the caldera, that hollow whistle slipping between pine trunks and the bones of burned trees. But I was wrong. There's a deeper kind of silence here, the silence of a place that has swallowed people whole and never spit them back out. I've been a ranger for almost 12 years, stationed on the northern edge near Mammoth Hot Springs. Yellowstone is the crown jewel of the National Park System, 3,500 square miles of geothermal fire and frozen peaks, geysers blowing their hearts out since 1872, when Congress declared this the first national park on Earth. But for all its beauty, the park is a graveyard. More than 20 people die here every year, not just from falls or bison goring. Some just vanish. We find their cars, their backpacks, their boots in the mud. We don't find them. I know because my daughter, Clara, was one of them. She was 8 when she disappeared. A late summer afternoon years ago. We'd been hiking near Norris Geyser Basin. I only turned my head for a minute, long enough to jot down some trail notes, and when I looked back, she was gone. No escrime. No sign of struggle, just gone. We searched with dogs, helicopters, hundreds of volunteers. For 2 weeks, I combed every acre. Nothing. It hollowed me out. My marriage didn't survive it. My career should have ended too, but I stayed. Maybe I believed that if I kept walking these trails, Clara might find her way back. Or maybe Yellowstone already owned me like it owned her. That's the grief I carry every step I take. Keeps me up nights, staring out at the steam vents rising like ghosts from the ground. It was in early autumn when I first saw the sign. I'd been paired with another ranger, Thomas Hayes, a guy in his mid-30s with a laugh like gravel and a knack for pretending he wasn't scared of anything. We'd gotten a call about an old service road that had reappeared near the canyon. Some tourists had tried to follow it, thinking it was a scenic loop, but ended up disoriented. Not unusual. Yellowstone is full of old ghost roads, relics from the 1940s and earlier, before the Park Service shut them down. We set out late in the afternoon, the sun bleeding orange across the cliffs. The air smelled like sulfur, faint but sharp, drifting from the geyser fields. I remember telling Thomas, if this is just another washed-out trail, let's flag it and head back. Don't want to get caught out here after dark. He smirked. What? You scared of the dark, Sam? I've seen what happens in the dark, I said, sharper than I meant to. He let it drop. The road bent deeper into a canyon I didn't recognize. Yellowstone has places even rangers don't know, corners you never reach unless something draws you in. That's when we saw it. A sign nailed to a weathered post, leaning crooked in the weeds. Welcome to Hungry Hollow. The paint was fresh. Thomas blinked at me. That on your map? No, I said. My stomach nodded. Never heard of it. We followed the road another quarter mile, and that's when the trees opened up. A town, or what looked like one, spread out before us, tucked into the valley like it had been waiting all along. There was a gas station with its pump handles dangling loose. A diner with a flickering neon sign that read ETS in a buzzing red glow. A barbershop pole, half lit. A motel with curtains fluttering in the windows though no wind stirred. It didn't make sense. There aren't towns inside Yellowstone. Just staff villages, ranger stations, the historic lodges. Nothing like this. Thomas gave a low whistle. Well, shit. Did we just stumble into the Twilight Zone? We should have turned around, reported it, marked it as some leftover film set or some elaborate art project. But curiosity has teeth, and grief makes you reckless. Something in me whispered that Clara was here, that maybe this was where the missing went. We walked down the cracked main street, boots crunching gravel. The diner was lit inside. Through the window, I saw silhouettes. A man slouched at the counter, a girl by the jukebox. Thomas cupped his hands to the glass. "Hello? Park service. You folks lost." The figures didn't move. Not until I tried. I called out, my voice trembling, "You need help." That's when the man at the counter lifted his head. His eyes were empty. Not blind, not white, just a void. He smiled slowly, like he'd been waiting for me. I felt my blood turn to ice. Thomas muttered, "Actors, right? Some kind of prank." But I wasn't laughing. My gaze snagged on the waitress behind the counter. Her uniform was faded, her braids neat, her apron crisp. On her chest gleamed a brass name tag. Irene. The name burned into me. I remembered it from an old missing person report. 10 years ago, a young woman named Irene Whitaker vanished while camping with friends near the park's west entrance. They found her car, her shoes. Not her. My throat went dry. Irene. She blinked at me, slow, mechanical. "What can I get you, folks?" Her voice was flat like a recording. I stumbled back. Thomas caught my arm. "Sam, what the hell is this place?" I couldn't answer, because in the diner window, a small handprint appeared, pressed into the glass from the inside. Child-sized. I froze. My breath caught. "Clara." I whispered her name. The sound vanished into the silence. Behind me, the jukebox clicked on, though nobody touched it. A song began to play, something warbling and old. And over it, faint as the hiss of a geyser vent, I heard a girl's voice call out from the shadows. "Daddy!" Thomas's hand clamped down on my arm, hard enough that I felt the bruise forming. "Sam, we're leaving. Now." But I couldn't move. That little handprint on the diner window held me like a chain. Small, smudged fingers. I saw Clara's handprints once, years ago, on the backseat window of my truck when she was eating a melting popsicle. Sticky little spirals in cherry red. I never cleaned them off. Not until the day I sold the truck, because looking at them made me want to drive into the nearest canyon. The handprint on the glass now looked just the same. "Daddy!" The voice drifted again. Thin, broken. It was her voice. I knew it with the certainty of blood recognizing blood. I lurched toward the door. Thomas yanked me back. "Sam, don't. You don't know what that is. What if it's her?" My own voice cracked, pathetic. "What if she's alive? What if she's been here this whole time?" His eyes softened for a fraction of a second. "You know that's not possible." He was right. The rational part of me knew. But grief doesn't speak the language of reason. Grief is a hunger that gnaws at you in the quiet hours, whispering what-ifs until you can't breathe. And here was my what-if, standing on the other side of a diner window in a town that didn't exist. The jukebox inside clattered, switching songs without anyone touching it. The lights flickered. For a heartbeat, the silhouettes inside the diner vanished. Gone. Just empty booths and dusty counters. Thomas muttered, "We're hallucinating. Some kind of gas vent. Sulfur poisoning. It happens. We should." A low hum cut him off. At first I thought it was an engine. But no, it was voices. Dozens of them, layered together, rising and falling like the thermal vents that breathed steam through the valley. A chorus, but not in harmony. Too many words at once. Too many languages. My skin crawled. From the motel across the street, a curtain shifted. A pale face peered out, then another beside it. All blank-eyed, all watching. Thomas swore. "Nope, I'm done. We're out of here." He tugged my sleeve, dragging me back toward the Jeep. My boots scraped asphalt, my brain torn between following and staying. Then I saw her, Clara, standing by the gas station pump. 8 years old, pigtails loose, the same pink rain jacket she'd been wearing the day she vanished. She looked exactly the same. I stopped cold. My lungs collapsed. "Clara." Thomas spun, saw nothing. "Sam, stop it." But she was there. I swear she was. She raised one hand, not a wave, more like beckoning. Her face was pale, expression unreadable. But those eyes, my God, they were her eyes. I tore free of Thomas's grip and stumbled forward. "Sam." His voice was desperate now, shaking. "That's not her." The ground shifted under me as though the street itself rippled like heat haze. I staggered but kept my eyes locked on her. If this was madness, I'd go mad. If this was death, I'd follow. Because what else did I have left? But before I reached her, the air shattered with a sound like a train whistle, a piercing shriek that echoed from the canyon walls. My vision blurred. I dropped to my knees, clutching my ears. The sound wasn't just in the air. It was inside me, vibrating my teeth, rattling my bones. When it finally stopped, Clara was gone. The gas station stood dark and empty. Pumps rusted, windows shattered. Not the half-kept place I'd seen seconds before. And the Jeep wasn't where we'd left it. It was parked 50 yards down the street now, headlights on, engine idling.
Thomas Vispered, Jesus Christ.
I didn't move. I just stared at that idling vehicle. The doors were open. The driver's seat was empty. But in the back seat, barely visible through the glare of headlights, was a figure. Small, still. Thomas leaned toward me. "You see it too, right?" I nodded. My voice scraped out, "Yeah." We both knew neither of us had driven the Jeep down there. Neither of us had turned on the ignition. And yet, it was waiting. Thomas and I stood frozen, staring at the Jeep idling down the street. Its headlights carved white tunnels into the dark, illuminating dust motes that floated like ash. The air smelled wrong. Not sulfur anymore, not pine sap, but something sweet, cloying, like rotting fruit. "Keys are in your pocket, right?" Thomas's voice was barely audible. I patted my jacket with trembling fingers. The keys were there, heavy, cold. Then who the hell's running it? Neither of us moved for what felt like an eternity. The figure in the back seat shifted slightly, just a tilt of the head. A child's silhouette. "Sam!" Thomas warned, but I was already moving. Each step felt like walking underwater, my legs heavy, the air thick. The closer I came, the more wrong the Jeep looked. Its paint wasn't the faded forest green the first knew. It was newer, shinier, like it had just rolled off the lot. The tires gleamed with fresh rubber, and the license plate, it wasn't ours. The figure in the back seat lifted a hand. Tiny fingers pressed against the glass. My throat closed. "Clara." I reached the door handle, heart hammering so hard I thought my ribs might crack. Behind me, Thomas shouted, "Don't!" But I yanked the door open anyway. The back seat was empty. Only a small, blue flower lay on the seat. A wild gentian, the same kind Clara used to pick for her mother. Its petals were fresh, dew still clinging. I staggered back, clutching it. My vision blurred with tears. "She's here," I whispered. "She's here, Thomas." He didn't answer. When I turned, he was staring at the storefronts across the street. His face had gone pale, eyes locked on the motel window where more faces had gathered. Dozens now, men, women, children, all staring silently. Some I recognized. I'd seen them on bulletin boards, in desperate flyers left by families. The missing, and they were watching us. We bolted for the woods, leaving the Jeep behind. Branches clawed at our arms as we plunged through the darkness, guided only by the beam of Thomas's flashlight. My lungs burned, but I didn't dare stop. When we finally collapsed against a fallen log, gasping, Thomas rounded on me. "What the hell is wrong with you? You almost..." He broke off, shaking his head. "You saw what it wanted you to see. That wasn't Clara. She's here," I snapped. My voice cracked. "I know it. You don't know anything. You're chasing ghosts, man. Maybe I am, but don't you feel it? This place, it's full of them." Thomas didn't answer. He just stared into the dark, jaw tight. Then softer, "My brother, Jacob. He vanished 2 years ago, out here."
No trace.
I blinked. He'd never told me that. "That's why I took this post," he said. "Figured if anyone could find him, it'd be me. But now," he trailed off, rubbing his face, "now I think maybe he found this place too." The silence between us was thick. I realized then that grief was the hook. This town didn't appear for just anyone. It appeared for those like us, hollowed-out men who couldn't let go. And maybe that was the bargain. It lured you with what you'd lost, offered a glimpse, and in return, it took something else. A faint glow flickered through the trees. Not Thomas's flashlight. Something pale, bluish. We turned. Between the trunks, a man stood. His clothes were ragged, his hair matted, his eyes empty. But Thomas gasped, stumbling forward. "Jacob!" The man tilted his head. His mouth moved soundlessly, then formed a word. "Stay." I grabbed Thomas's arm. "Don't." But he shook me off, tears in his eyes. "That's him. It's him, Sam." The figure raised one hand, beckoning. The glow pulsed brighter, and with it came the chorus of voices again, surrounding us, whispering in harmony and dissonance. Words I couldn't understand, but layered with longing, hunger. I clutched the blue flower tighter. Its petals had begun to wilt in my palm. Thomas stepped into the glow. I shouted, lunged for him, but it was like the forest itself pulled me back. Vines catching my boots, branches closing in. My voice tore from my throat, raw. "Thomas!" He didn't look back. He walked straight into the figure, and both dissolved into light. For a moment, the woods blazed like 1,000 fireflies. Then darkness rushed in, heavier than before. I collapsed to my knees. The silence was total now. Not even the wind moved. I was alone. The flower crumbled to dust in my hand. When I staggered back to the road, the town was gone. Just empty forest, cracked earth, and steam rising from distant vents. My Jeep was back where we'd left it, cold and dark. No sign it had ever moved. No sign Thomas had ever existed. I climbed inside, hands trembling on the wheel. The radio flickered to life on its own. Static. Then, faintly, a child's voice threaded through. "Daddy, stay." I killed the engine, heart pounding. My reflection in the windshield looked hollow, eyes ringed with shadows. I knew then what Yellowstone had always been. Not just a park, not just a wilderness, but a mouth. A hollow that swallowed grief, chewed it into silence, and fed on the echoes. And now it wanted me too. For days after Thomas vanished, I told no one. The park runs on paperwork, incident reports, chains of command. But how do you write up? Partner disappeared into a glowing figure in a town that doesn't exist. You don't. You bury it. I kept to my patrols, checked campsites, cleared trails, smiled stiffly at tourists. But every time the wind shifted, I caught it. That sweet, rotten smell of Hungry Hollow. Every time the mist rose from a vent, I thought I saw faces. And at night, in my cabin, the flour dust I'd carried clung to my skin no matter how much I scrubbed. Sleep brought dreams. Clara standing on the edge of the canyon, reaching for me. Thomas's voice calling from the trees. Stay, stay. The faces in the motel window multiplying until they filled the glass. Pressed together, hungry. I started drinking again. Cheap whiskey from the store in Gardiner. Anything to burn the whispers from my throat. But the hollow wouldn't let me be. It began with a hiker's journal. A couple from Ohio flagged me down near Canyon Village. Said they'd found an old notebook wedged into a tree stump off-trail. Thought it belonged to a ranger. I took it back to my cabin. The cover was cracked leather, water-stained. Inside, pages warped with age but still legible. The first entry dated back to 1948. A ranger named Arthur H. Kinney. He wrote about a patrol gone wrong, stumbling into a settlement not marked on any map. Described neon lights, a diner, a motel. Names scratched into glass. He mentioned the hollow, said it wasn't a place, but a hunger, feeding on sorrow. His last entry read, Irene walks the diner now. Jacob tends the pumps. I hear my boy calling me from the canyon rim. The hollow takes what it needs. If you found this journal, don't stay. Don't listen. Don't follow the voices. My hands shook. Irene, Jacob, the same names, different decades. And Clara. I tried to show the journal to my supervisor. She glanced at the brittle pages, frowned. Arthur Kinney? Never heard of him. You sure this isn't some camper's creative writing project? But the way her eyes flickered told me she knew more. Later that night, I found her in the archives building. Door locked, lights off, but I jimmied it open, row after row of files. And in the back, a box labeled Unexplained Disappearances. Yellowstone. Inside were hundreds of reports. People gone without trace. Handwritten notes, maps with circles around valleys and canyons. And tucked between them, a faded photo. Rangers in uniform, lined up in front of a sign. Welcome to Hungry Hollow. My supervisor was in the photo. Younger but unmistakable. When she caught me, her face went cold. You don't understand, Sam. The hollow has always been here. We don't talk about it because it doesn't matter. Once it calls you, you don't get a choice. You knew. My voice cracked. You knew about Clara? She looked away. That was the answer. Betrayal burned hotter than any geyser steam. I didn't wait for permission. I packed gear, a lantern, and Clara's old stuffed rabbit I'd kept hidden in a drawer for years. If the hollow wanted me, I'd go to it on my own terms. I retraced my steps, past Norris, down into the canyon. The road appeared at dusk, as if it had always been there. The sign gleamed fresh again. Welcome to Hungry Hollow. The town was alive, neon buzzing, music drifting from the diner. And this time I didn't hesitate. I walked Main Street. Figures moved inside shops, shadows of the lost. They didn't speak, only watched. Their eyes glowed faintly, like embers. At the diner, Irene stood behind the counter. She smiled at me, lips pale. Coffee? I said. My hands trembled around the stuffed rabbit. "Where's my daughter?" The jukebox whirred. A child's voice came through the static of its speakers. "Daddy." She stepped out from the kitchen. Same pink rain jacket. Same braids. Same gap in her teeth. "Clara." My voice broke. She smiled faintly, but her eyes weren't right. Too dark. Too deep. "You came back," she said. I knelt, arms open. But when I tried to hold her, my hands passed through. She flickered like smoke. "Stay with me, Daddy," she whispered. "Forever." Behind her, Irene's grin widened. Unnatural. The other patrons turned, dozens of hollow eyes fixed on me. The diner pulsed with light, the jukebox warping into screams. And Clara reached again. "All you have to do is stay." Clara's hand hovered inches from mine, her eyes wide, pleading. "Please, Daddy, don't leave me again." The voices rose, 100 mouths murmuring, overlapping. "Stay, stay, stay." My chest constricted. The grief, the guilt, the endless nights of wondering if I could have saved her. It all pressed down until I thought my ribs might snap. But somewhere in the back of my skull, a question gnawed. Was this really her? Or just the hollow wearing her face? I forced the words out. "What happened to you, Clara? That day in the storm?" Her smile faltered. For a moment, her face flickered. Pale, hollow-cheeked, lips cracked. Then the jacket was pink again, the braids neat. "I waited, Daddy. I waited so long." The diner's windows trembled. Neon sputtered. The walls seemed to breathe, inhaling our sorrow. And I understood. This town was no accident. It was a trap built on memory, baited with loss. A mouth that fed on grief until nothing human was left. The bell over the diner door jingled. I turned and Thomas walked in. Same uniform, same tired eyes. But he wasn't right. His skin was pale, stretched. His smile too wide. "Miss me, partner?" His voice echoed, hollow. I stumbled back. "No." "No, you're dead." He chuckled, sliding into the booth across from me. "Not dead. Not alive. Just here. The hollow doesn't let go once it takes you." My throat tightened. "Then help me. Help me take Clara back." His grin collapsed into something like pity. "You still don't get it. Clara isn't here. Not really. None of us are. We're just what's left when the hollow chews through the grief."
Sa those wearing familiar skin.
I looked at the girl beside me. She tilted her head, eyes glimmering. "Don't listen to him, Daddy." Thomas leaned closer. "You want her so bad you'll drown yourself in this place. That's the trick. You'll stay thinking you've saved her. But you'll be just another face in the window." The whispers surged louder. I bolted from the booth, clutching the stuffed rabbit like a talisman. The diner dissolved around me, walls bending, floor rippling like water. I stumbled onto the street. The town was alive now, every window filled with faces. Doors creaked open, figures spilling into the road. Men in ranger uniforms, children in faded jackets, women in dresses decades out of date. All of them whispering, "Stay." In the middle of Main Street, Clara appeared again. Tears streaked her face. "Why don't you want me anymore, Daddy?" The words gutted me. My knees buckled. I wanted nothing more than to kneel, to hold her, to never let go. But Arthur Kinney's words rang in my skull. The hollow takes what it needs. "What happens if I stay?" I asked, voice shaking. Clara's tears stopped. Her lips curved into that too wide smile I'd seen before. The faces around us leaned closer, waiting. "You'll never hurt again," she said softly. "You'll never be alone. You'll have me." Her eyes gleamed. "Forever." I remembered the journal, Arthur's warning, and I remembered the last thing I owed Clara. The truth. I clenched the stuffed rabbit to my chest. "You're not my daughter." Her face twisted, splitting at the seams. The pink jacket rotted to black, braids unraveling into smoke. The figure shrieked, the sound like metal tearing. The townsfolk surged forward, voices rising in a frenzy. My skin burned as if their whispers were acid. I ran, through the neon glare, past the motel into the woods. Trees bent inward, branches clawing. The town stretched with me, every street looping back, no way out. But I had one weapon left: fire. I lit the lantern, smashed it against the pines. Flames roared up, hungry as the hollow itself. Smoke billowed, choking the whispers. The figures shrieked, fading in the glow. Clara's shadow thrashed, dissolving into sparks. The town wailed, neon shattered, windows burst. The hollow screamed through every voice at once, a sound so raw it rattled the marrow of my bones. And then, silence. When I staggered back into the canyon, the town was gone. Just forest, burning at the edges, smoke curling into the night sky. In the ashes at my feet lay the stuffed rabbit, charred but still whole, and something else, a small blue gentian flower, fresh, dew-kissed. I picked it up, trembling. For a moment, I swore I heard her voice, not from the hollow, not from the shadows, just a faint memory in the wind. "Thank you, Daddy." My knees gave out. I pressed the flower to my chest and sobbed until dawn. When the rangers found me hours later, I had no words. What could I tell them? That I'd burned a town that didn't exist? That my daughter's ghost had finally let me go? They wouldn't believe it. Maybe I didn't either. But I knew one thing. The hollow wasn't gone. It never would be. It would wait for the next grieving soul, for the next father too broken to move on. And maybe one day it would wait for me again. The fire scorched 50 acres before crews contained it. They questioned me for days. Why had I been there? Why was my lantern shattered in the brush? I gave them half-truths. Said I thought I saw a stranded hiker. Said I lost my way. But when they pushed harder, I saw it in their eyes. They already knew. Maybe not everything, maybe not the hollow's hunger, but enough. Enough to keep their mouths shut and file it away as operator error. My supervisor avoided me. I think she feared I'd bring it up again. Force her to acknowledge the hollow she'd spent decades ignoring. And maybe she was right, because once you see it, you never stop. Back in my cabin, I couldn't sleep. The walls felt thin, the shadows crowded. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like footsteps. On the third night, I woke to a sound, a soft thump at the window. I sat up, heart hammering. On the glass, a handprint, small, faint. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. The gentian flower on my nightstand wilted before my eyes, petals crumbling into dust. And then a whisper, low and intimate. "Stay." I nearly opened the window, nearly let it in, but I didn't. Instead, I clutched the charred rabbit like a crucifix and waited for dawn. I went back to the journal, to Arthur Kinney's final words. The hollow takes what it needs. But there was one line I hadn't noticed before, scrawled in the margin, faint, almost erased, but sometimes it gives back. I thought of the flower that appeared in the ashes, of Clara's thank you carried on the wind. Maybe destroying the town hadn't ended it. Maybe it had only shifted something. Maybe Clara's soul, whatever was left of it, had been freed. The thought gutted me and saved me in the same breath. Weeks passed. Tourists came and went. The park rolled on as if nothing had changed. But I knew better. On my last patrol before winter, I hiked to the canyon rim where Clara had vanished all those years ago. The wind cut sharp, carrying the smell of sulfur. I laid the charred rabbit at the edge. My knees ached as I bent down. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I couldn't save you, but I hope I set you free." The canyon answered with silence. But just as I turned to leave, the breeze shifted. For an instant, I smelled her shampoo, strawberries and sunshine. A sound followed, soft as laughter. I fell to my knees, tears streaking my face. Maybe it was memory. Maybe it was mercy. Either way, I took it. I resigned that spring, packed my things, left Yellowstone behind. But sometimes, on quiet nights in whatever small town I end up in, I'll dream. I'll hear the jukebox hum, see neon flicker against glass. I'll see Clara waiting by the pumps, pink jacket glowing in the dark. And I'll wake with the taste of ash in my mouth. The hollow isn't gone. It waits, patient, hungry. And one day, when my grief is sharp enough, when the guilt gnaws too deep, I'll follow the road again. And this time, I won't come back. My father used to say the mountain eats its own. He said it once when I was 10, standing at the overlook where fog rolled through Shenandoah's hollows like a living thing. He spat his tobacco, pointed at the ridgeline, and said, "Never trust a mountain that keeps its dead." I didn't understand him then. I thought it was just one of his mountain sayings, the kind that sounded wise but boiled down to nothing. But years later, after Iraq, after my brother David put a bullet through his head in Mom's garage, after I came back to Shenandoah with nothing left but nightmares, I understood. The mountain keeps its dead, and sometimes it keeps the living too. I took the ranger job because it was all I knew. Boots, uniform, patrols, structure kept me from drinking myself into the grave. Out here, with the fog and the owls and the endless trees, I could pretend my ghosts were just part of the landscape. Until the day I found David's handwriting carved into a tree miles from where he'd ever been. And it read, "The devil keeps his bargain." It was on my 3rd week in Shenandoah when I saw it. The carving was deep, fresh enough the wood still bled sap. My brother had been dead for 6 months. He'd never set foot on this trail. But the letters were his, sharp, slanted, the same way he used to scribble his name at the bottom of Christmas cards. I stood there in the silence, hand pressed to the bark. Cold sweat crawled down my spine. Behind me, the woods shifted. No footsteps, no animal, just a weight, like the mountain itself was holding its breath. I turned, flashlight cutting through the fog. Nothing, but the hollow below. A narrow cut in the earth thick with laurel and shadow, seemed darker than it should have been. I could have sworn something moved down there, something too big to be a man. I asked around at the ranger station, got nothing but shrugs. But in town, at a diner outside Luray, I made the mistake of asking an old woman if she'd ever heard of the devil in the hollow. Her fork clattered. The whole place went quiet. Finally, she leaned in, breath sour with coffee. "Some bargains ain't meant to be spoken of, Ranger." "What kind of bargain?" She tapped the side of her nose, eyes cloudy. "Blood bargain. Your kin ever tell you about it?" I froze. "What do you mean?" But she just laughed. A dry, rattling sound. "Mountain eats its own. And if it don't eat you, the devil will." I didn't sleep that night, because my father saying, "The mountain eats its own," suddenly felt less like poetry and more like warning. The next night on patrol, fog rolled in thick as wool. My radio cut out. The woods went silent. That's when I heard it. Matt, my brother's voice. I swung my flashlight, shaking. David! A figure stood between the trees. Same height, same stance. He lifted his head, eyes glinting. He kept his word. My throat closed. Who did? The fog swallowed him whole. And when it cleared, the carving on the nearest tree was new. The bark still bleeding. One brother pays, one brother stays. The carving on the tree gnawed at me all day. When my shift ended, I drove back to Mom's house in Elkton. She hadn't touched David's room since the funeral. His medals still on the wall, bed made military tight, as if waiting for him to come back. I searched the boxes in his closet, looking for answers. That's when I found the ledger. An old, leather-bound book, pages brittle with age. Not David's, not Dad's either. Older. Inside were names written in cramped handwriting, my family's going back generations. Each name followed by 2 dates, birth, and then, instead of a death date, a word. Paid, taken. Some had both, some had neither. And in the margin, a phrase repeated in different inks, different hands. The devil keeps his bargain. I confronted my father the next day. He sat on the porch, oxygen tank hissing, eyes cloudy from years of smoke. Why didn't you tell me? I slammed the ledger on his lap. What is this? What bargain? His jaw tightened. He didn't look at the book. You weren't supposed to see that. David's name is in here. Mine too. Finally, his gaze met mine, hard as stone. The mountain eats its own. Been that way since the war. The devil came to the first Mayfield in these hills, offered protection. The land would feed us. Our enemies would fall. But every bargain needs blood. My throat went dry. So David paid what was owed. His voice cracked for the first time in years. It should have been me. The oxygen hissed between us. The only sound. That night, the hollow below Skyline Drive pulsed with light. Not lanterns, not fireflies. Something older. I followed it, heart hammering. The deeper I went, the more the woods closed in. Laurel thick as walls, fog rising in sheets. At the center, I found a circle of stones blackened with soot. The air stank of iron. On the stones lay bones. Deer, dog, human. And sitting atop the pile as if waiting was David's dog tag. The trees groaned like voices. The shadows bent together, forming something too tall, too thin. Its eyes burned red as coals. The devil in the hollow. It didn't move like an animal. It unfolded, stretched, a shadow with weight, bones that weren't bones, a grin that split too wide. Matthew, it rasped, my name in David's voice. I staggered back. Stay the hell away from me, tilted its head. One brother paid, one brother stays. That is the bargain. I never agreed to anything. You carry the blood. The bargain was made long before you. It leaned closer, its grin stretching into the fog. But bargains can be altered. You want your brother back. My heart lurched. You can have him, it said softly. Give me another. Blood for blood. Life for life. That is the way of mountains. I drove until dawn. Didn't care where. Just away from the hollow, away from the voice. But the offer stuck in my skull. You want your brother back? I thought of David's last note, the one I found in the garage. Couldn't fight it anymore.
I'm sorry.
I thought of Mom, still setting his place at the table. I thought of all the people who wouldn't be missed. Campers, drifters, men who vanished into the park and were never found. Blood for blood. All I had to do was choose. By the time I got back to my cabin, I hadn't slept in 36 hours. My reflection in the bathroom mirror looked like a ghost. But then it blinked, and the reflection didn't move with me. David stared back, his hollow mouth slack. "Don't," he whispered. His voice cracked like glass. "Don't make the bargain." Then the mirror split, a jagged crack running straight down the middle. And from the hollow outside, a voice rolled up through the fog. "Choose." The devil didn't leave me alone. Every patrol, every night in the cabin, the fog carried voices. David's sometimes, my own sometimes, but mostly the devil's. Life for life, blood for blood. Choose came in my dreams too. I'd wake with the smell of iron in my nose, my hands sticky, though there was never blood. The ledger weighed on me. I saw the word paid beside David's name, blank space beside mine. Felt like a noose waiting to cinch. And then a new carving appeared. On my cabin door. "Matthew Mayfield, your turn." I went to my supervisor, Ranger Collins. A steady man, 30 years in Shenandoah, more folklore in his head than books on the shelf. I showed him the ledger, the carvings, told him about the devil in the hollow. He listened in silence. When I finished, he sighed. "Your father should have told you." My stomach dropped. "You know about this?" Collins looked older than I'd ever seen him. "Every family in these hills knows, but it's your bloodline that carries the bargain. Always has, always will." I stepped back. "And you said nothing? You let David." He didn't meet my eyes. "It wasn't my choice. Some things are older than duty, older than laws." Rage boiled through me. I trusted him, looked up to him, and all along, he'd let me walk blind into the devil's snare. The next night, the hollow lit again. This time I didn't run. I went down with the ledger clutched tight, the stuffed rabbit of my childhood in my pocket like a charm. And there he was, David, or something wearing him, standing in the circle of stones, eyes hollow, lips pale. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "You carved it," I whispered. "Your handwriting. You brought me here." His face twisted with pain. "I didn't. He did." The devil's shadow loomed behind him, grin splitting the fog. "Blood for blood," it rasped. "Give me another, and your brother walks free." David shook his head violently. "Don't listen, Matt. I paid the price. Don't let it take you too." The devil leaned closer. "Or let it take her." And in its grin, I saw my mother's face. I stumbled back to the cabin, shaking. My boots left tracks in the dew like bloodstains. Mom's name in the devil's mouth, that was the breaking point. I pulled the ledger from my bag. Pages yellowed, brittle. Names stretching back to the first Mayfield. The bargain was always the same. One dies, another stays. The devil feasts and the family survives. But what if the ledger was the chain? What if I could break it? I tore a page free. David's entry. My name below it. Then I lit a match. The paper curled, blackened. The smell of burning ink filled the room. The flames flared higher than they should have, a scream threading through the fire, and the words burned themselves into the wall above my bed. "Blood cannot burn." That night I dreamed of drowning. Fog filled my lungs, my veins, my skull, and when I opened my mouth to scream, only blood poured out. I woke to find the ledger back on the nightstand, whole, untouched, my name darker than before, and carved into my arm, raw and bleeding, were the words, "Your turn." The devil didn't need my agreement. It already had its claim, and unless I found a way to end it, it would take me, or worse, it would take her. I drove to my father's house in the middle of the night, arms still bleeding where the words had carved themselves. He was awake, as if he'd been waiting. "You saw him," he said quietly. Not a question. "Why didn't you warn us?" My voice shook with fury. "David's dead. It wants me now. Why didn't you end this?" His eyes watered, milky with age. "Because I couldn't. The Mayfields survived the war, the famine, the depression because of that bargain. If I broke it, we'd all have been swallowed by the mountain. The devil don't give without taking. Then help me stop it," I begged. He coughed, long and ragged. "Only way to stop a bargain is to give it something it can't carry." "What does that mean?" He just shook his head. "You'll know when it's time." The next evening, Collins called me to meet at a backcountry trailhead. Said he had answers. Said he could help. But when I got there, I saw the truth. He wasn't alone. 2 hunters stood beside him, pale and hollow-eyed, rifles in hand. "You've got to understand," Collins said, voice trembling. "It's always been Mayfield blood. That's the way it stays. You die, the rest of us are safe." The hunters lifted their guns. "You were never supposed to come back here," Collins whispered. "You brought the devil too close. Now we all pay unless you do." Betrayal burned hotter than fear. This man I trusted, this land I served, both had turned against me. And in the fog between us, I saw the devil grinning, feeding on it all. I ran. Shots cracked through the trees. Splinters of bark stung my face. The mountain swallowed sound, twisted direction. One moment the trail was under my boots. The next I was plunging into laurel thickets, hands torn, lungs burning. And then I was there again, the circle of stones, the hollow's heart. The devil rose from the fog, vast and shifting, grin splitting wider. Collins stumbled in after me, gun shaking. The hunters followed. "Take him," Collins shouted. "He's the blood you want." The devil's grin stretched. "Yes, but bargains can change." And with one sweep of its shadow, the hunters' rifles twisted into bone. Their mouths opened in screams that turned to silence as the fog swallowed them whole. Collins fell to his knees. "Please." The devil's laugh was the mountain itself splitting. I stood in the circle, blood running from my arm, heart hammering. "You want me?" I shouted at the devil. "Take me. Leave the rest. Leave her." His head tilted, grin wide. "Too easy. Bargains must balance. One pays, one stays." And then I understood. My father's words. Give it something it can't carry. The devil could take blood, flesh, life, but not love, not choice. So I stepped forward, into the stones. "I choose neither," I said. My voice broke, but it was steady. "No one pays, no one stays. The bargain dies with me." The devil shrieked, shadow twisting, fog burning cold around me. My bones felt like glass shattering, but I held the ledger high and tore out my own page. My name, my blood, my place in the chain. And with the last of my strength, I set it alight. The flames roared, brighter than day. The devil screamed, not in triumph, but in rage. I woke on the overlook where my father once told me the mountain eats its own. The ledger lay beside me, burned to ash. My arm was clean. No carvings. Collins was gone. the hunters too. The hollow below lay silent, just trees and fog, no devil waiting. But David's dog tag rested in my palm, warm as if someone had pressed it there. I don't know if I broke the curse, or if I just delayed it. All I know is the mountain feels different now, lighter, emptier, and sometimes, when the fog rolls in thick and the night gets quiet, I hear my brother's voice, not calling from the hollow, not begging, just saying my name, like he's finally free. They say the swamp remembers everything. That's what the old fisherman told me my first week on the job. His voice was rough as cypress bark, his eyes gray as the fog that curled across the water. The swamp don't forgive, Ranger, he said. It just holds on, waiting for you to come back round. At the time, I brushed it off. Superstition, I thought. Just another southern tale to scare outsiders. But after what happened, after the things I saw on Billy's Island, I know he was right. The Okefenokee doesn't forgive. And God help you if it remembers your name. I wasn't supposed to be here. Okefenokee was a transfer, a last resort after I'd burned every bridge in North Carolina. Nobody wanted a ranger who showed up drunk to morning briefings, who still carried his daughter's shoes in his pack like a shrine. Her name was Lily. She was 7, bright, stubborn, full of fire. The night of the crash, I should have been driving. Instead, I let my wife take the wheel while I answered a work call. The truck that hit them ran a red light. I buried her with a stuffed frog clutched to her chest. The same frog I can't bring myself to throw away. Okefenokee was supposed to be a fresh start. But grief doesn't care about geography. And neither, I would learn, does the swamp. On my second week, I was sent to patrol Billy's Island. Once, it had been home to settlers, loggers, families who tried to tame the swamp. All gone now. The swamp took it back. All that remains are ruins. Stone chimneys, rusting tools, gravestones half swallowed by moss. The locals don't go there. They whisper that the island is cursed, that the settlers made a bargain with something in the dark waters, and when they failed to keep it, the swamp dragged them under. I didn't believe it, not yet, but standing in the clearing where a church once stood, I swore I heard singing. Low, mournful hymns echoing through the cypress trees. And when I turned, I saw a child's shoe half buried in the muck. Not old, not weathered, bright pink, the same size as Lily's. That night, the fog rolled in thick, carrying a glow across the water, a lantern swaying back and forth. I thought it was a fisherman at first, but the glow wasn't warm. It was cold, bluish, wrong. And then I heard the voice. Daddy! The lantern bobbed closer. A figure moved behind it. Tall, thin, face hidden in shadow. Daddy, come home. The voice was Lily's. Perfect. I stumbled forward, heart breaking open. Lily! But the fisherman's warning came back to me, sharp as a knife. The swamp remembers everything. The lantern went out. The figure dissolved into fog, and the water below me rippled like something massive had just slipped beneath the surface. Couldn't let it go. The shoe, the lantern, the voice that wasn't Lily's. So I went back to Billy's Island in daylight. The ruins looked harmless then. Moss-covered stones, vines snaking over rusted plows, the silence of abandonment. But in the charred remains of a cabin fireplace, I found a journal. Leather warped, pages damp but legible. It belonged to Elias Turner, a settler. Dates from the 1870s. The last entry read, "We made our bargain. The swamp gives, we give. But Mary says it's wrong. She says the swamp takes too much. She says our children ain't ours no more. If she speaks again, I'll have to silence her. Better one voice gone than all of us swallowed. My hands shook as I closed the book. I thought of Lily, of the lantern, and I realized the settlers hadn't vanished. They'd been claimed. Back in town, I asked the locals about Billy's Island. Most turned away, muttering, refusing to speak. Only one man answered, a cook at the diner missing 2 fingers. They thought they could outsmart the swamp, he said, flipping a burger. Made a pact with what lives under it. Promised blood for protection. But they broke it. Always do. I asked what happened when the bargain broke. He looked at me with dead eyes. The lantern man comes, calls with the voice of what you lost, leads you out into the water. You go willing. You drown smiling. The bell dinged. He slid me my plate like nothing had happened. I didn't eat. That night, I woke to footsteps on the cabin porch. Small ones, light, familiar. I opened the door and froze. Lily stood there, or something wearing her face. Her hair wet, her eyes dark pools. She clutched her stuffed frog to her chest. "Daddy," she whispered, "come with me. It doesn't hurt." Tears burned my eyes. I wanted to hold her, to believe. But when I reached for her, her hand was cold as swamp water. And behind her, at the tree line, the lantern man waited. His grin wide, his lantern blue. The next day, I forced myself back to the island. I followed a trail of half-submerged stones until I reached a pool darker than the rest. The water was still black as ink. Locals call it the drowning place, where the settlers gave their sacrifices, where the swamp fed. On the bank lay more shoes, dozens of them, children's, women's, men's, some rotted, some fresh. I felt sick. The water rippled. Something vast stirred beneath, and I heard Lily's voice again. Not from the fog this time, from the water itself. "Daddy, please." I studied Elias Turner's journal again, desperate for answers. Buried in the middle was a confession. Mary tried to flee with the children, said she wouldn't give them up. I told her the swamp would never let her go. I was right. Her body came up in the reeds. The children never did. The ink blurred, water-stained, but one line burned clear. The swamp keeps what we love most. That is the price. I slammed the book shut. My chest felt hollow. If the swamp had Lily's voice, it was because it had taken something of mine. My love, my guilt, my bloodline, and now it wanted the rest. The lantern man came again that night, this time inside the cabin. He filled the doorway, taller than any man, lantern swinging low. His grin split too wide, his eyes glowing faint. He set Lily's frog on the table, perfect, clean, like it had never been buried with her. "You can see her again," he whispered. His voice was every voice I loved. "Lily, my wife, even my father. All you must do is follow. One step into the water, and the pain ends." I stared at the frog, at the impossible perfection of it. My heart cracked open. My grief roared, but so did my fear, because I realized this wasn't about Lily. It was about me. The swamp didn't just remember the settlers. It remembered me. I called my mother that morning, voice raw from another sleepless night. "Mom," I said, "did we ever have family in Georgia?" She went quiet, too quiet. Finally, "Your great-grandfather. He left after the war. Never spoke of it. Where did he live?" Another pause. "In the swamp." Her voice cracked on the last word. She hung up before I could ask more. I sat there, phone buzzing in my hand, stomach hollow. It wasn't random that I ended up here. The swamp hadn't just remembered the Turners. It remembered us. I found another entry in Elias Turner's journal, one I'd skimmed before. Some of us fled. Some stayed. But we made sure the devil had its due. We gave it the Mayfields first. Their bloodline bound. Their grief sweetest. As long as they fed it, we were safe. The words punched the air out of me. Mayfield, my mother's maiden name. My family hadn't just stumbled into the swamp. We were betrayed to it, marked to carry the bargain forever. And now it was my turn to pay. That night I dreamed of drowning, but it wasn't water filling my lungs. It was grief. Lily's laughter twisting into screams. My wife's face breaking against glass. The lantern man stood at the bottom of the swamp, lantern burning blue. Around him floated bones, toys, shoes. He held Lily's frog in one hand, my wedding band in the other. "You can have them back," he said, voice thick as mud. "All of it, all you lost. One step, and you'll see them again." I reached for the ring. But when my fingers brushed it, the bones of my daughter's hand closed over mine. Skeletal, black with rot. I woke choking on swamp water. The frog was on my chest. Wet. Cold. The next day, Collins showed up at my post. He'd transferred down from Shenandoah. I thought I was seeing things, but it was him, older, more hollow, eyes dark-rimmed. "You can't outrun it," he said before I could speak. I tried. Followed me here. Always does. "You think the swamp is different from the mountain?" Same devil. Different mask. I grabbed his arm. "Then how do we stop it?" He only laughed, bitter and broken. "Stop it? You don't stop hunger, son. You feed it, or you starve with it." Then he handed me a knife. Old, rusted, bone handle cracked. "Choose someone else," he whispered. "It's the only way." And before I could answer, he walked straight into the swamp and didn't come back. That night, the lantern man came again. He didn't whisper this time, didn't offer. He commanded, "Bring me another. Give me blood, and I give you peace. Or I take her again." His lantern burned blue-hot, searing through the cabin walls. Shadows bent toward him like worshippers. And when I looked at the mirror, Lily's reflection stared back at me. Her lips moved. "Please, Daddy." My hands closed around the knife Collins gave me, and I realized the swamp wasn't asking anymore. It was demanding. I went back to Billy's Island one last time. At the far edge of the ruins lay a grave. The stone was cracked, the name barely legible, but I could read enough. Reverend Thomas Mayfield. My blood, my ancestor. The journal had lied. It wasn't just Elias Turner's betrayal. My family hadn't only been victims. We'd been priests of the bargain, shepherds of the sacrifice. I fell to my knees in the muck. My whole life, my grief, Lily's death. It all tied back to this swamp, to my blood. And now the swamp wanted to collect what was owed. That night, a letter was waiting on my bunk. Old paper, my father's handwriting. "Son, if you are reading this, then the swamp has found you. I tried to keep it from you, but our family's debt runs too deep. We fed it for generations, fed us back. I broke the chain when I left, but it always remembers, always calls us home. You can end it. Don't feed it. Don't give it another voice. Let it starve even if it takes you to. Better one of us lost than all of us bound forever." Tears blurred the ink. For the first time in years, I understood my father. He hadn't abandoned us. He'd been running from the swamp all his life, and now I was standing where he feared most. I went back to the pool at the heart of Billy's Island, the drowning place. The lantern man rose from the water like smoke solidifying, lantern swaying, grin splitting wider. He held Lily in his arms, or the thing that wore her face, her skin pale, her eyes bottomless. "Choose," he said. His voice was the swamp, the trees, the insects, all speaking at once. "Give me blood, and she is yours. Deny me, and I drag her down forever." Lily reached for me. "Daddy, don't let me go again." My chest cracked open. My soul screamed, but I remembered my father's words. Better one of us lost than all of us bound forever. And I stepped into the water. The swamp closed over me, black water cold as death. The lantern man loomed above, lantern burning blue. "Who do you give?" he demanded. "Who bleeds in your place?" I clenched the knife Collins had given me. My reflection stared up from the water's surface, hollow-eyed, broken. I drove the blade into my own palm. Blood spilled into the swamp, mixing with the black. "I give you me," I gasped. "And only me. The line ends here." The lantern man shrieked, lantern flickering. The swamp roared, trees groaning, water boiling. Lily's image dissolved, breaking into mist. The frog sank beneath the surface, and the lantern shattered. The swamp screamed, then silence. I woke on the bank, lungs burning, knife still in my hand. The drowning place was gone. Just water now. No stones, no shoes, no bones. The journal lay beside me, pages blank, as if it had never held a word. But the grief was still there. Lily was still gone. The swamp hadn't given her back. It never would. Yet for the first time I felt something else. Peace. Because the chain was broken. My family's debt ended with me. And as I walked back through the cypress and fog, I swore I heard a child's laughter, not calling me into the water, just saying goodbye. Her name was Emily. She vanished 2 years ago on patrol in Redwood National Park. They called it an accident. Said she must have gotten lost in the fog, slipped in the river, maybe dragged out to sea. But I knew better. Emily was careful, sharp. She knew the redwoods like veins in her palm. She didn't just disappear. And every time I walked beneath those towering trees, I swore I felt her there. Watching, waiting. That's why I took the transfer. Why I put this uniform back on after swearing I was done. Not to protect hikers, not to stop poachers, to find her. The first time I heard the name, I was in a bar outside Crescent City. Old logger, drunk on whiskey, leaned across the table and whispered, "You looking for that girl? Then you best pray the Hollow Man ain't got her." He said it like a curse. "The Hollow Man lives in the stumps," he told me. "Born of all the trees we butchered. The tribes warned us, said the redwoods would take back what we took. Didn't listen. Now he walks in the fog, looking for more." I laughed it off, but when I drove back through the forest, the fog pressed so thick against the glass it felt alive. And for a second, in the rearview mirror, I swore I saw a figure. Tall, bark-skinned, hollow eyes, watching me. In the Ranger archives, I found a yellowed report from 1897. A logging camp had vanished overnight. Dozens of men gone. Only thing left were their tools and blood smeared on stumps like paint. The sole survivor wrote, "We were warned. The Yurok elder said the trees had a spirit. Said if we took without asking, it would come." We laughed at him, called him liar, Next night, the hollow man came, tall as the trees, face empty as the stumps. He took them all, left me to tell the tale. The report ended there, but in the margin, in newer handwriting, someone had added, "He still walks." My third week on duty, I was patrolling near Lady Bird Johnson Grove when the fog rolled in heavy. Radio cut out. Silence swallowed everything. And then I heard it. Daniel. Her voice. Emily's. It came from the fog, soft, breaking. The way she sounded the night she said yes to marrying me. I froze, throat tight. Emily? The fog shifted. A figure moved between the trees, small, familiar. She raised her hand, waved me closer, but when I stepped forward, the trees groaned, and in the fog behind her, something taller moved. Hollow, watching. I found it in the back of the ranger station filing cabinet. A report I wasn't supposed to see. Subject: Ranger Emily Carter missing person case. Status: closed. Cause: presumed fatal. But beneath the official page was another, and signed, hand-scrawled. She didn't vanish. She was taken. We all saw it. The hollow man came out of the fog. She went with him. Nobody speaks of it, or we'll lose funding, lose our jobs. Better one ranger lost than the whole park exposed. The paper shook in my hand. Rage clawed up my throat. They knew. They all knew. And they let her go. I thought I'd left Collins behind in Okefenokee, but there he was in Crescent City, sitting at the diner counter like he'd never drowned in the swamp. Same haunted eyes. Same bone-deep exhaustion. "You're chasing ghosts again," he said, not looking up from his coffee. "Emily wasn't a ghost," I snapped. He finally turned to me. "Neither was Lily, until she was." I wanted to punch him. Instead, I asked, "You've seen it here too, haven't you?" His silence was answer enough. "The hollow man," I whispered. Collins nodded once. Different face. Same hunger. Back at the station, Chief Ranger Harmon pulled me aside. "You need to stop asking about Emily," he said. "You're stirring up old wounds." "She was my fiancée," I said. "You think I'm just gonna forget her?" His jaw tightened. "You don't understand what you're dealing with." Then his voice dropped, almost a plea. "The hollow man doesn't just take, he trades. Better her than the whole town. We made a choice." My stomach dropped. "You fed her to it." He didn't deny it. He just said, "Don't make us feed you too." I followed the sound of knocking. Out near Oric, deep in the forest, I found it. A hollowed redwood, split wide like a mouth. Inside, the walls were carved with names. Dozens. Hundreds. Emily's among them. I touched the letters with my fingertips, shaking. The bark was warm, pulsing like skin. And then a voice from the hollow. "Daniel." Her voice, weak, trembling. I pressed my head against the wood. "Emily, I'm here. I'll get you out." But when I pulled back, my hands were covered in sap. Thick, dark, blood red. Fog poured through the grove, thick as smoke. The hollow man stepped out of it. Taller than the trees, body made of bark and rot, eyes empty sockets. He carried something in his hand.
Emilys Ranger hat.
"Give her back," I shouted, voice cracking. The hollow man tilted his head, almost curious. Then he pressed the hat into his chest. It sank into the bark like it was part of him. Emily's scream echoed through the forest. I fell to my knees. The hollow man didn't move closer. He didn't need to. He already had her. Back at my cabin, I found another note on my bunk. Same handwriting as the one my father left in Okefenokee. The bargain never ends. They always want blood. Choose another or lose her forever. Collins was sitting in the corner, eyes hollow. You see now, he said, every park, every forest, every ranger. It's all the same curse, wearing different skins. I stared at the knife on my desk. The same choice again. Betray someone else, or lose her forever. The hollow man's shadow stretched across the wall, though no light burned behind me. And Emily's voice whispered from the hollow of the trees. Please, Daniel, don't let me die here. I returned to the hollowed redwood, guided by her voice in the fog. Inside, I saw her, not quite alive, not quite gone. Her eyes were pale as mist, hands pressed to the walls of bark. The sap clung to her skin like chains. I tried to run, she whispered, but he feeds on your memories. He keeps you here, part of him, part of the forest. I reached for her. The moment I touched her, the bark shivered, and the hollow man's face appeared above her like a shadow in the ceiling. You can't have her, it growled. Its voice was the cracking of timber, the roar of the wind. I will, I spat. I found an old tribal ledger in Crescent City Library. Notes, warnings, sketches. The Yurok elders had cursed the land after the logging barons desecrated the sacred groves. They bound the hollow man to the trees. The curse wasn't just revenge. It was preservation. Life fed it, yes, but it also protected the forest from greed. And all those who betrayed the forest, settlers, loggers, even rangers like Harmon, became part of its debt. Emily had been taken because someone chose greed over life. And now the debt was mine. Collins confessed at dawn. He didn't take Emily alone, he said, voice low, eyes hollow. The Park Service did. Harmon, the chiefs, they made a deal. We'd give one, the hollow man keeps the rest safe. Emily was chosen. I didn't stop it. I staggered back. Betrayal burned hotter than the forest fire smell that lingered in the fog. You let her go? I hissed. I had no choice, Collins whispered. But you're different. You can stop it. You can end it. I realized then that I had to face not only the hollow man, but the corruption and betrayal woven through the Park Service. That night, I took a boat into the fog, lantern in hand. The trees became shadows. The air thickened. I could hear whispers of every ranger who had come before me, every victim bound to the hollow man. And then I saw it, towering, massive, face hollow and bark cracked, lantern swinging, grin wide enough to swallow the night. Emily's form hovered at its side, hands pressed to her chest like she was trying to hold herself together. Daniel, she whispered, please, don't let him win. I gripped my knife, heart hammering. Adrenaline and grief coiled in my veins. The hollow man stepped forward, the fog swirling with each step. As I prepared to strike, Harmon emerged from the fog, gun raised. You can't do this, he shouted. You'll die and she'll die with you. The hollow man doesn't forgive mistakes. Then why did you send her to him? I spat, his face twisted in guilt. It was the only way to protect the park, to protect everyone else. One sacrifice and the rest are safe. I realized then that the curse wasn't just the hollow man. It was the people who fed it who betrayed their own. Emily's life depended on my choice, and the forest waited. I followed the fog deeper into the grove, past the twisted roots, past trees that seemed to lean in to watch. The hollow man waited at the center, Emily suspended in its hollowed chest cavity, her eyes wide, mist curling from her mouth like smoke. "Step closer," it whispered, voice like splintering wood. "Bring me the debt or she dies." I gripped the knife, feeling the weight of every betrayal, every choice made by those before me. My fingers were numb, my heart frozen with fear and grief. This was it. The hollow man's grin widened as I lunged. I stabbed into the bark. The knife sank into its chest with a sickening crunch. Sap and blood mixed, sticky and hot. The forest groaned. Emily fell free from the hollow. Her eyes were foggy, but she breathed. The hollow man writhed, shadow and bark splitting and twisting. "You cannot destroy me," it hissed. "You are bound by the debt. You will feed it." "I'll choose," I growled. "Not you." And I drove the knife deeper. As the hollow man screamed, I saw its face shift. It wasn't just bark. It was every betrayed ranger, every settler who had fed it, their faces twisted in hunger and despair. The curse wasn't just revenge. It was hunger fueled by betrayal. Every sacrifice, every compromise had grown the hollow man stronger. I realized then, to save Emily, I had to sever the chain myself. I held my blood over the hollow cavity and pressed my hands to the sap. "Take me," I whispered, "but leave her." The hollow man shrieked, shadow folding in on itself. The forest shook, and then silence. Emily fell into my arms, trembling. The fog lifted. The redwoods were still, silent witnesses to the battle. But I was changed. My palms bore burns where the sap had touched my skin. My chest ached as if the weight of every betrayal had settled there. "I thought I lost you," I whispered. "You saved me," she said softly, clutching my hand. Yet I knew the curse wasn't entirely gone. The hollow man had been weakened, bound for now, but the forest remembered. It remembered greed, betrayal, and debt, and someday it might call again. We walked back to the ranger station as dawn broke over the towering trees. Emily safe, the hollow man gone, or at least buried deep beneath roots and shadows. Collins was gone. Harmon faced a reprimand but survived. The rest of the park rangers whispered about the fog and the disappearances that never officially happened. A shape in the water, impossibly tall, black as tar. No face, just void where eyes should be. Limbs that rippled like smoke, and water spraying off it in sheets. It didn't move like a normal creature. It flowed. It whispered, "Ethan." I fell back, heart hammering. I realized then the stories were true. The lake doesn't just hide beauty. It hides hunger. I reached out to my colleague, Ranger Whitman. He knew about my brother's accident. We trained together, trusted each other. But one night, while checking the rim, I found him talking to the lake, whispering something I couldn't hear, tossing a rope over the edge. "You? What are you doing?" He didn't turn. "You think you can fix it? You can't. The lake demands a debt. One of us pays, or it will take more." Betrayal burned hotter than fear. My friend was willing to trade anyone to appease whatever lurked below. And the deep one had him smiling. That night, the fog thickened until the lake vanished entirely. I wandered the rim, flashlight trembling in my hand, when I saw them. Figures, translucent, rising from the mist. Past rangers, one by one, their faces familiar and hollow, eyes empty as the deep water below. "Ethan," their voices layered, overlapping, echoing like waves. I froze. One reached out, hand cold as the lake. Not threatening, pleading. "The lake remembers," it whispered. "It remembers all mistakes." I realized then, the lake doesn't just take, keeps. It collects guilt, grief, and every soul who steps too close. And my brother's scream had never left it. I confronted Whitman the next day. "You're feeding it," I said. "You're trying to save yourself." He flinched. "You don't understand." I had to. "It promised me." He trailed off. His eyes darkened. "It promised I could bring him back. Ethan, my choice, my debt." I felt rage and horror collide. Betrayal cuts sharper than claws. "Your choice," I spat. "And what about me? My grief?" He didn't answer. That night, I found a rope dangling over the cliff edge, knotted with old ranger belts, and I understood he had tried to bargain with the Deep One. I had to see it for myself. I took a kayak out onto the lake, the fog swallowing every sound. The water beneath me was black, liquid mirror reflecting nothing but emptiness. And then it rose. The Deep One, taller than the cliffs, black as night, eyes voids of endless depth. "Ethan," it whispered. The ghostly rangers circled me now, chanting, silent, and screaming all at once. I paddled toward the center. Fear burned through me, but so did something else. Guilt. I hadn't protected my brother. Not then, not ever. The Deep One reached for me, and I felt its hunger in my chest, my bones, my very soul. Whitman appeared beside me on the kayak. "It will take you," he said, "unless you give it someone else." "No," I said, voice trembling. "It's mine, my grief, my debt." He looked at me, haunted. "You'll die. It won't let go." The Deep One's voice rose, layering my brother's screams, the ghost's pleading, and Whitman's whispers. "You can step back," it said, "or you can step in." And I realized the choice wasn't about survival. It was about letting go, letting the lake have its due, or giving in to rage and guilt. I jumped, not into death, not into surrender, but into the water itself, letting it engulf me completely. The lake pulled, twisted, whispering every failure, every regret, every memory of Ethan. My lungs burned. The kayak floated away, and then I saw him, my brother, trapped in a bubble of water, pale, eyes wide with terror. "Daniel!" he screamed. The Deep One loomed, silent now, as if waiting to see my choice. I had one moment. Take the blame, the debt, everything, or let the lake keep him forever. I woke at the edge of the cliff, drenched, the kayak shredded by unseen currents. The Deep One had vanished, but its presence lingered. I felt it in my chest, in my memories, in the icy wind. I returned to the ranger station, desperate for any record of the lake's history. Old logs told of Native American warnings, of spirits dwelling in Crater Lake's depths, punishing those who harbored guilt, or those who betrayed their own. It wasn't just revenge. It was balance. The lake collected souls to maintain some fragile moral order, feeding on grief and betrayal alike. And now it had marked me. Whitman didn't wait for me to ask. "I made a deal," he admitted, voice hollow. "I offered it, my conscience, my service, anything, just to save my sister. I thought I could trick it, but I couldn't, and it chose Emily." I realized then that the Deep One doesn't care who you are. I felt a tug, pulling me further down, and I knew I could not return. The lake became still, silent, black as obsidian. I wasn't gone entirely, not in the sense of death. I was woven into the Deep One's consciousness, bound to the lake's depths, a part of its endless memory of grief, betrayal, and human sin. Emily surfaced, gasping, alive. I whispered to her through the water, barely audible, "Go, live, remember," and she did. Years later, Emily tells the story quietly to new rangers. They see her on the cliffs at dawn, whispering to the fog, warning others of the lake. Sometimes, she says, when the mist curls just right, you can see a figure beneath the water. Not fully there, not fully gone. Watching, remembering, protecting. Because the lake keeps its debt. And some debts are paid with everything. It was just before dawn when I found the fog. Acadia National Park had always been beautiful in the morning. Waves crashing against granite cliffs, gulls crying overhead. But that morning, it felt alive in the wrong way. Thick fog rolled across the carriage roads, swallowing everything in gray. My partner, Riley, had gone missing 2 weeks ago. They said she wandered off during a fog patrol. Lost, presumed dead, but I never believed it. Every morning since, I'd walked the trails, searching, listening, hoping. And now the fog felt like it was watching me. I followed a familiar trail along the cliffs when I heard it. A whisper, carried by the wind. "Daniel!" I froze. My partner's voice. "Riley." But the wind shifted. The fog thickened. I spun around. Nothing. Just twisted trees and the endless gray. Then I heard it again. Not just a whisper. A footstep behind me. Heavy. Slow. Watching. And I realized that Acadia wasn't empty. Something moved in the fog, something patient. Back at the ranger station, I found a journal tucked behind the archive shelves. It belonged to Ranger Thomas Milligan, who vanished in 1923. The fog walks, carries the lost. Here's your guilt. If you try to run, it will follow. It will wait until it owns your grief. The last entry was scratched into the page with desperation. I see them in the fog, voices of the lost. I can't stop it. I am part of it now. I shivered. The words weren't just warnings. They were a confession. And I knew Riley wasn't gone. The first time I saw it, it was just a shadow taller than a man, moving without sound. No eyes, no face, just the outline of something made of mist and darkness. It didn't run. It didn't chase. It waited, patient, watching, and then it spoke, my voice, Riley's voice, voices of other rangers. "Daniel, come with me." The forest around me felt wrong, alive, bending toward the shadow. I ran, but I knew it would follow. I confronted Chief Ranger Collins the next morning. "Where's Riley?" I demanded. Collins avoided my gaze. "We did what we had to. She wouldn't survive. We made a decision for everyone's safety." Betrayal cut deeper than the fog. "You sent her to it?" He hesitated, then whispered, "The fog walker demands a debt. We sacrificed her. She was chosen." I stumbled back. My hands shook. The fog seemed to seep through the walls. And I realized the danger wasn't just the fog walker. It was human greed and fear, betrayal that fed the supernatural. That night, the fog crept into the ranger station, curling around the windows like fingers. I walked the carriage roads, flashlight trembling. The fog swallowed everything, and I saw them. Figures moving silently, pale and translucent. Lost rangers, hikers who'd vanished. Faces twisted in terror, eyes hollow. "Daniel!" Riley's voice, clear and pleading. I ran toward it, but each step led me deeper into fog that seemed alive, twisting, pushing me back. The voices layered, some pleading, some mocking, some screaming, all demanding I remember the past. I found Whitman, another ranger who had survived previous fog encounters, standing at the cliffs, drenched in cold mist. "You can't fight it," he said. "The fog walker doesn't just hunt bodies. It hunts your mind, your guilt, your grief. You think Riley is lost? She's here, and she's waiting for you to fail." I swallowed my fear. "How do I save her?" He shook his head. "You can't. Not fully. You can only survive, or it takes someone else. That's the bargain." Betrayal and fear mingled in his words. He knew the fog walker's secret, and he had been part of the sacrifices before. I stepped into the fog alone, letting it curl around me, swallowing my senses. The forest bent, trees leaning like skeletal arms. Shadows moved where they shouldn't. Whispers filled the air. And then I saw her, Riley, standing on a path that led nowhere, fog swirling around her. "Daniel, come with me," she said, but her eyes weren't her own. Hollow, empty. The fog walker emerged behind her, taller than the tallest tree, its body formed of mist and darkness, face blank yet somehow knowing every failure I had ever committed. The fog walker's voice echoed in my mind. "Choose. Give me a debt, or lose her forever." I realized then that the choice wasn't about strength. It was about guilt. Whitman had tried to appease it before. My chief had sacrificed Riley. I had one choice: offer myself or betray someone else. Riley reached for me. "Daniel, don't let it win." The fog pulsed around us, thickening, pulling, testing my resolve. And I understood the price of survival. I took a deep breath and stepped into the fog walker's embrace. It wasn't violent. It didn't drag me. It fed on my fear, my guilt, my memories. I felt every mistake I'd ever made, every second I hadn't protected Riley. The forest blurred. The fog became a suffocating cocoon. But I held on to one thought. She could escape. She had to live. And in that moment, the fog walker's power seemed to falter, even if just slightly. I realized the battle wasn't just physical. It was moral, emotional, and psychological. I followed Riley's voice to the edge of a cliff overlooking the fog-choked coastline. Whitman appeared, drenched, shaking. "You can't do this alone," he warned. "The fog walker has existed for centuries, feeding on guilt, grief, betrayal. It doesn't forgive." I didn't care. I stepped closer to the edge. The fog walker emerged, taller than the pine trees, shifting, body writhing with mist and shadow. Its voice echoed in my mind, whispering every failure I'd ever had. Riley stood at its side, eyes hollow, but she reached for me. "Daniel, don't let it control you." Whitman fell to his knees, voice trembling. I've seen what it does to people. We've all sacrificed to keep it calm. The park service, the townspeople, everyone." He revealed the truth. Riley had been chosen because the fog walker demanded a debt, and he, along with other rangers, had agreed to leave her in its power to preserve the rest. Betrayal burned in me. My colleague, my friend, complicit. "I can't let her die because of you," I spat. Whitman shook his head. "You can't fight it. Only one survives the bargain. Only one can bear the weight of grief." I found an old tribal ledger in the Ranger archives. The Penobscot people had cursed the coastal fog centuries ago, after settlers desecrated sacred lands. The fog walker was born of that curse, feeding on grief and guilt, binding those who carried secrets and betrayal. It wasn't a monster born from malice. It was a mirror, a reflection of human mistakes, amplified into a predator that could take life and trap souls. And it had been here long before the park, long before Whitman or me. The fog walker's tendrils of mist twisted toward me. Whitman stepped back. "You can't save her," he cried. I realized that the betrayal wasn't just his. The whole system, the park, the town, the people who ignored the warnings, we were all complicit. Riley's voice echoed, "Daniel, choose the right one. Don't let it win." I understood. Survival wasn't about escape. It was about accepting responsibility, taking the burden, and letting her go. I reached toward the fog walker. The mist engulfed me. The whispers of past victims pressed against my mind. "Give me your guilt. Give me your grief. Or lose her forever." The fog walker hissed. I took a deep breath, heart hammering, and let it claim me. Riley's form flickered. Then she floated free of the fog. Her eyes cleared. "You're alive," she whispered, tears streaking her face. I felt the fog walker's hunger sink into me, pulling me into its misty realm. My consciousness became part of the fog, the keeper of grief, the collector of guilt. She ran, safe. I remained, a shadow among shadows, a guardian of the curse. I let the fog walker swallow me completely. Mist wrapped around my body like ice, whispering every regret, every guilt, every failure. My lungs burned, my vision blurred. Riley's voice guided me, faint but real. "Daniel, hold on. You can save her by letting go of yourself." The fog pulsed with hunger, aware that I had chosen the burden willingly. I felt every soul it had claimed before, their memories flowing into me. And I realized this was no ordinary monster. It was eternity. Riley struggled in the fog, trying to reach me, but I could feel her tethered to the shadows. I focused all my will, channeling my grief, guilt, and love into the fog, letting it consume me instead of her. The fog walker recoiled, surprised by the offering of pure responsibility. Riley broke free, tumbling onto the coastal rocks below, gasping and crying. I whispered to her through the mist, "Go. Live. Remember." She did. Whitman arrived on the cliffs, watching the fog swirl. "You survived?" he asked, disbelief in his voice. I shook my head. "No. I'm part of it now." The fog walker's mist rose around me, shaping me into its consciousness, binding me to its memory. Whitman's guilt made him tremble. He had been complicit in sacrificing Riley. "You can't run from this," I whispered through the mist. "You know the debt. Don't betray again." Whitman fell to his knees, terrified, finally understanding the true cost of betrayal. I was no longer Daniel the Ranger. I was the fog walker's mirror, part of its being, its memory, its hunger. I could see every failure, every act of betrayal, every lost soul. I felt every pulse of the fog, every whisper of the trees and cliffs. But I could also see Riley, safe, alive, free from the curse because I had taken the weight for her. The fog shifted, swallowing me entirely. I became one with it, guardian, collector, watcher. Riley tells the story to new rangers quietly, warning them of the fog and the cliffs. Sometimes, when the mist curls over the carriage roads at dawn, you can see a shadowy figure moving within it, taller than a man, hollow and still. It watches, it remembers, and if you carry guilt, grief, or betrayal, it may call your name, because some debts are paid with everything. I hadn't been back to Letchworth in 10 years. As a kid, I'd spent summers running through these forests with my best friend, Alex. Then he disappeared. just gone near the lower falls. They said it was an accident. I never believed it. Now I'm a ranger, returned to the same park, same trails, same stone bridges. The waterfalls roar as they did before, but something feels off. The forest smells older, heavier, as if it remembers, and I can hear whispers. At night, the cabins are quiet, but I hear it, my name, Ethan, Alex's voice. I freeze. The hair on my neck rises. I run outside. Fog curls around the trees, clinging to the waterfalls like smoke. Branches creak unnaturally. Alex, the forest replies, whispering back words I never want to hear. My childhood friend's voice calling me, pleading. I found an old notebook in the ranger archives. Pages yellowed, ink smeared. It belonged to Ranger Jonathan Mills, who disappeared in 1978. The pines speak. They promise to return what was lost. But it's never free. The voice you hear isn't them. They take your grief, your guilt, your memories, and leave only shadows. Beneath it, a sketch of a tree with twisted limbs, a hollow in its trunk, and inside, faint human forms. I shivered. The forest hadn't changed. I was patrolling near the Middle Falls when I saw it. A shadow moving through the trees, taller than a man with limbs like gnarled branches. It didn't run. It didn't chase. It waited. Then I heard Alex's voice again. Come here. I froze, torn between relief and fear. The shadow's limbs twitched like it was breathing. I realized the forest itself had become predator and prison. At the ranger station, I confronted Chief Ranger Landry. You're seeing things, he said, or the forest is playing tricks. I slammed the notebook on his desk. You knew Alex vanished here because of this thing. He avoided my gaze. We made a choice. One person lost is better than many. The forest demands sacrifices. We try to minimize it. Betrayal cut deep. My mentor, someone I trusted, had left my friend to the whispering pines to protect others. The forest outside seemed to lean closer, listening. That night, the forest came alive. The pines whispered endlessly, voices overlapping. Children laughing, friends calling, old rangers pleading. Ethan, Alex. I followed the voices deeper into the woods, heart hammering, flashlight flickering. Each step felt heavier. The ground seemed to twist beneath my boots. Branches reached toward me like arms. Shadows flitted at the edges of vision. And then I saw them. Faint figures pressed against the tree trunks, faces distorted, eyes empty. Former victims, rangers who had disappeared, trapped in the forest. The whispering pines weren't just trees. They were prisons. Whitman, a senior ranger who had survived a previous encounter with the forest, appeared behind me. You shouldn't be here, he said, voice low, shaking. They feed on your guilt. They take more than you think. The forest, it remembers betrayal. I spun to face him. You all knew about Alex. He flinched. We tried to save people, but the forest is patient. It waits, chooses. You can survive or someone else dies. I realized then that the forest's curse was sustained by human fear and betrayal. And I wasn't the first to be tested. I ventured further, the whispering growing deafening. The trees seemed to bend, creating narrow passages that twisted impossibly. Roots reached for my boots. The forest floor shifted beneath me. Then I saw it. A massive tree, hollowed at the trunk, with shadows moving inside, faces pressed against the wood. Alex's voice called to me from inside. Ethan, help me. The whispering pines shifted, limbs stretching like snakes, blocking the exit. It was patient, waiting for me to panic, to give in to fear. The forest spoke directly to my mind, twisting my memories. Give me your guilt, give me your grief, or lose Alex forever. I realized the choice wasn't physical. It wasn't about running or fighting. The whispering pines fed on emotional debt. Whitman tried to warn me again, trembling. If you resist, you risk losing yourself and everyone you care about. I had one chance. Face my grief, accept responsibility for the past, and offer myself willingly instead of letting Alex be consumed. I stepped toward the hollow tree, letting the forest engulf me. The whispers pierced my mind, calling every failure, every unspoken regret, every betrayal. My body trembled, my heart ached. Alex's face appeared in the shadows, faint, fragile. Ethan, don't let them win. I pressed my hand against the tree, letting my grief flow into the whispering pines. The voices paused, the shadows shifted. Alex floated free, stepping out of the forest mist, trembling but alive. And I felt the forest close around me, my consciousness tethered to the whispering pines. A guardian, a collector of guilt and grief, ensuring no one else would fall victim unnecessarily. The deeper I went, the more I understood. Ancient carvings in the tree trunks told stories of the Seneca people who once lived here. They had cursed the forest after settlers destroyed sacred groves. The whispering pines were meant to protect the land, but over time they grew hungry, feeding on grief, guilt, and betrayal. Each person who disappeared became part of the forest, their memories trapped in the wood, their voices whispered to lure others. Alex hadn't been lost by accident. The forest had claimed him, and now it tested me as it had tested countless others. Whitman appeared beside me, trembling. I've been part of this for years, he admitted. We thought we could minimize the toll. Some sacrifices were unavoidable. Alex, he was chosen because he carried my mistake. I didn't have the courage to defy the forest, and I watched. Betrayal cut deep. The man I trusted had abandoned my childhood friend, choosing safety over loyalty. You made him a prisoner, I spat. Why? Whitman's face twisted with guilt. Because the forest demands a debt. We survive by giving it. I survived. Others didn't. I found an ancient ledger hidden beneath the ranger archives, detailing the curse. The Seneca had bound spirits of the forest to punish human greed and betrayal. The whispering pines didn't kill indiscriminately. They mirrored morality, taking the guilty or the complicit. Over centuries, the forest learned patience, could wait decades, feeding subtly, growing stronger with human fear. I realized the forest was more than a predator. It was a reflection, and I was being measured against my grief and loyalty. The whispering pines swirled around me, shadows stretching like arms. Whitman stepped back. You can't save him. You can't save yourself. But I understood that survival wasn't about defiance. It was about responsibility, accepting my own grief and guilt, offering myself to the forest to save Alex. Alex's voice echoed from the hollow tree. Ethan, choose the right path. I pressed forward, hand on the twisted bark, letting my emotional burden flow into the forest. The shadows recoiled, the whispers paused, and Alex emerged from the mist. The forest tested me one last time. Its shadows wrapped around me, probing my memories, every failure and betrayal I had witnessed or caused. I let it consume me willingly, letting my grief, guilt, and sorrow anchor the forest instead of Alex. He stumbled forward, free from the whispering pine's grasp, alive. Whitman collapsed, guilt-stricken, finally realizing that human betrayal fueled the forest's hunger. I became one with the forest, a guardian within the whispering pines, a collector of grief, ensuring that while it remained hungry, it would not take innocence unnecessarily. Alex ran from the forest, alive, carrying the memory of our shared past and my sacrifice. The forest swallowed me completely, shadows twisted, limbs of the pines curling around me. The whispers became deafening, voices of all the lost, rangers, hikers, even Alex, blending into one endless chorus. I pressed my hand to the hollow tree where Alex had been trapped. I let the grief of years flow outward. The loss of my friend, the guilt of surviving, the betrayals I'd seen and endured. The whispering pines pulsed, recoiling, then accepting. I felt the forest claim me, not violently, but as part of its memory, part of its being. Alex stumbled out of the mist, coughing, tears streaking his face. You're alive?" he asked. I smiled faintly, though he couldn't see me properly. "I'm part of it now. Go. Tell people what happened here." He ran, freed from the forest's grasp. For the first time in years, he was safe. The whispering pines shifted around me, satisfied. His hunger temporarily sated. Whitman appeared on the edge of the forest, trembling. "You survived?" he asked. I shook my head. "No, I didn't leave. The forest claimed me." He understood then. The whispering pine's hunger had always been fueled by betrayal, fear, and grief. Only someone willing to bear it all could protect the innocents. Whitman fell to his knees, haunted by his own complicity, and never returned to the forest again. I was no longer Daniel the Ranger. I had become part of the forest itself. I could hear every whisper of the lost, every sigh of guilt, every cry of despair. I could feel the hunger, but also the balance. No longer indiscriminate because I carried responsibility. The forest became my body, my memory, my conscience. And yet, I could still watch over Alex, still guide him from the shadows, ensuring he and others would survive. Years later, new rangers speak of a figure in the whispering pines, a shadow among shadows, watching, waiting, protecting. Sometimes, hikers hear voices calling their names, not maliciously, but warningly, guiding them away from danger. The forest remains hungry, but I remain within it, the guardian of grief, guilt, and betrayal, ensuring that no one else becomes part of the whispering chorus unnecessarily. And those who carry heavy hearts sometimes pause and whisper my name back, unknowingly speaking to me in the woods I now inhabit.